Good evening and welcome. I'm Roy Blitzer, and our show is Ask Dr. Business. The purpose of our time together is to give you information and insight and data, and the desired outcome is you're going to take that and become a happy and more satisfied employee. This evening we're starting a new series. A series is called Jobs That Require Travel, and we're especially fortunate to have as our guest Kim Howland, who is a Vice President of Global Marketing for Omnicell Corporation right here in Mountain View. Welcome.
Thank you.
I want to remind everyone to please call in with any questions for Kim. The phone number here is 650-856-1491. Now, please tell our viewing audience a little bit about you. Where did you grow up? What did you study? How did you get to be a VP? And a little bit about your job history.
All right. I grew up in Vermont. I did my undergraduate at Bates College. I studied biology, a BS in biology. And then I went to Harvard for graduate school. I have a PhD in immunology. And while I was there, I was offered the opportunity to do the 2 years of medical school with the med students. So I also have a master's in medical sciences. And I wanted to help bridge the gap between basic research and clinical medicine.
Hence marketing.
Well,
not really.
A little bit of a jump from there. I spent 10 years consulting, helping companies develop new technology, all healthcare focused. And after 10 years of consulting, I wanted to step down from the 90-hour weeks, and I got interested in the better use of IT in healthcare, and Omnicell was interested in looking at how they could advance their software technology and improve business, and so I had the opportunity to join them.
Now, tell us all about the jobs that you've had that required travel, and a little bit about your travel scheduling now, so everyone will be in total shock when they hear about
Right. So most people would think consulting, management consulting, you're on the road 4 days a week.
Professional services.
Exactly.
Right?
On the road 4 days a week. But the company that I worked for, Health Advances, we had an office-based model. So we traveled to clients for meetings, but most of our work was done in the office, in our home offices.
So how much did you travel for those 10 years?
So for those 10 years, I probably, for 7 of the 10 years, I was home the majority of the time. I might be...
Great.
Yeah, it was really great. I would have day trips. I was lucky enough to have mostly local clients, both on the East Coast and then when I opened an office here in California. For 3 years, I did have a client where I was responsible for commercializing an HIV diagnostic around the world. And those 3 years did involve some pretty intense travel.
Just even before we go to this job, tell us what that intense travel is. I'm sure these people will
So
be
that
shocked.
was for periods of 2 to 3 weeks at a time. I would go to a different city every day. So I would leave my house, fly to Europe or Africa or Asia, and go to a meeting, get on a plane, go to the next city, spend the night, get up in the morning, go to a meeting, go to the airport, fly to the next city.
When you took the job,
Yes.
how did they position it? Did they tell you this? Did
So
Did you do this knowingly,
Yeah.
or does it?
No. So when I took that job consulting, that was very much advertised as an office-based job with not as much travel. When I did develop that client and took on that project, as the project evolved, I did know there would be travel, and it was something that I was willing to do. I was much younger, and getting to travel the world and advance HIV therapy was a passion of mine at the time. So I was...
Plus, you were bought into the job. You didn't want to not do it.
Right, exactly.
Well, let me just remind everybody that I'm here with Kim Howland. Our show is Ask Dr. Business, and our series is Jobs That Require Travel. Please call in. The fascinating life that she's led is worth a question or two. And the phone number is 650-856-1491. I'm surprised you took another job after that one, but you then came to the job you're in now.
Yes.
Tell us about how that was positioned. Was the travel part of the job then?
That was positioned as minimal travel.
Minimal, okay.
Yes, so when I joined Omnicell, my role was to evaluate healthcare trends and see how Omnicell could better position its own products, and then what opportunities for mergers or acquisitions there would be that would allow us to be better positioned in how healthcare was evolving. And so it was expected that there might be a little bit of travel to companies we might be interested in working with, and potentially to conferences.
Now, without embarrassing everybody, what did that little bit of travel look like?
For the first 4 months, it was
A little bit of
a little
travel.
bit of travel, and then I was sent to Florida for 15 months. So I was gone about 95% of the time from home.
And then you came back to
And
California.
I came back to California, and now I travel 2 to 3 weeks a month.
Kim, the fact that you're here with me is very nice. Thank you. Tell the audience a little bit about what the travel routine does to your life here in California. What happens when you go and leave?
Disruptive. I spend more time with friends that I have in other cities
Got it.
than I do here in California. So it does make it hard to have an active social life here. The flip side of that is I do get to spend, I have friends from previous life, I have friends all over the country and all over the world, and I do get to see them a lot more than I would otherwise. So that actually works out well for me, and also family on the East Coast.
Now, tell me a little bit about a typical travel day. Do you try to arrange your travel to get the first plane out? That's what I used to do, because you don't want to be stuck.
That's it, absolutely. So
But
first,
now they're at 6:30 in the morning. Do you do that?
I do 6 o'clock flights. I do, which is early, but it is worth it because often I'm connecting. So I travel to St. Pete, Nashville, Pittsburgh, almost none of which there are direct flight. Well, occasionally there's a direct flight, but it's never at the time you want. So, so the rule of thumb is when there's a connecting flight, you never want to be on the last flight after your connection. So first flight out of San Francisco, always. And
That's a great tip, and I didn't even
it
ask
is.
for any yet.
No, that is a good tip. Let's see, and then what else?
You mentioned your connecting flight. You don't want to be.
Oh, and then I also am very purposeful about where I connect through. So
Give us the cities that you want to stay. Chicago, I'm sure you try to get away from Chicago.
well, so Chicago in the winter is never a good. Yeah, I actually stay out of Chicago for another reason, because I'm addicted to the caramel cheese popcorn they have in that airport, and you have to be careful about what you eat when you travel all the time. So that's why I don't go through O'Hare. But
I used to get dizzy going through that tunnel,
yeah,
rushing from the lights. And
yeah. Houston is fine in the winter, but not great in the summer because of the thunderstorms. So you have to be a little bit careful there. I try to avoid Dallas at all costs because I always miss my connections there because there's never a gate. I don't know how that works out, but you land at the airport and you can't go to the gate.
now,
So.
do you have? This is not something we prepped for. Do you have a travel agent that you work with? You must know more than they do.
So we have a service that is online, and we are encouraged to book our own travel, but we do have a dedicated agent through Balboa. But I typically do my own so that I can pick where I'm traveling through. And also connection times are important. So
Do you try to follow the airline's rules of an hour and a half, or do you give
Oh,
yourself
no.
more time?
Oh, no, less time. And how long I arrive before the flight?
Yeah.
Yeah, at the most an hour, but I have pre-check, or if you do a known traveler number, so you can go through security faster. Never check a bag. I always am checked in a day in advance, and my boarding pass is on my phone, so I don't have to go through any lines.
Anything.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, since you traveled quite a bit when you were starting out in your career, and now what has changed? What are the major differences besides the 9/11 security, which I think all of us have experienced at some point?
Yeah, although the interesting thing is, so right after 9/11, you weren't allowed to bring bags onto the airplane. I don't know if you remember this,
I do,
right?
and my wife had her knitting needles taken away,
Yeah,
too.
so you couldn't bring your carry-on, and so you actually could board really quickly because no one was fighting for the overhead bins, which that was nice for a little bit there. But no, the big difference is, well, a couple things. One, the flights are always full now, so
Interesting.
you never get the empty middle seat where you can kind of sprawl out a little, or very rarely do you get that. So that's a little bit of a bummer. And then the other problem with that is if you do miss a connection and you're standby on a different flight, it's harder to make it on unless you're on the airline that you have status on. So it makes it a little bit more important to pick good connections. And I do think lately it's gotten bad that the weather, the weird weather, has made a lot of delays. So you're always getting home much later than you want, or sometimes not on the day that you want.
Have you ever missed a flight?
I have missed flights, missed connections. I've never missed a flight because I've gotten to the airport too late.
Wow.
I have talked my way to head of security lines, and once in Spain, I talked my way onto a plane without a boarding pass.
Wow. But
Yeah.
you've never lost your passport?
Never lost my passport, never lost my boarding pass. But I was in Greece and the computers went down, and so they finally loaded us onto a plane without boarding passes. And when we connected in Madrid, the line to get boarding passes was so long, and most people had already missed their connection, but my colleague and I hadn't. And so I told her no one would let us cut in line, even though we could make our flight. And so we ran to the gate, and I laid out a very logical argument for the woman there. And I said, you know, this is what happened, and you're going to have to pay for us to spend the night and find us a new flight tomorrow, or you can just let us on this plane. And, you know, here's our ticket number and everything. And she let us on.
Perfect. Now, I think one of the things before we start getting advice, what is your most fascinatingly interesting travel story that our audience might enjoy hearing? You gave me one when we started prepping that I thought was clever, but I can't remember what it was.
So this was why I never check a bag. I was traveling for a multiple week trip in Europe, and Germany, Lufthansa, which is a great airline, and they almost never lose anything, lost my bag going from Berlin to Munich. And it was one of those days where I was just in Munich for a couple hours, went to my meeting, got back on the plane, and then flew to London, and my bag didn't catch up with me. And I was laying over for a weekend in London. I was training for a half marathon, and I just had the suit I was in. I had no other clothes. And so I had to go out, and first thing I did was buy running clothes so I could go for my long run. And then I waited, and still no luggage. And so then I had to go shopping again, wearing weird clothes. So I got to buy myself a whole new outfit.
That is an interesting story. Now, did they find your suitcase?
Eventually, yes, my suitcase caught up to me.
Yeah. Now, talk a little bit about the job now. What would you typically do as a VP of global marketing? You're traveling all the time. Do you visit customers? Do you visit your corporate sites? I guess I feel like saying, why do you have
Why
to
do
be
I travel?
Yes,
so,
thank you.
Yes, so I am responsible for product development, and Omnicell has engineers in multiple locations. So we have engineers here in Mountain View, but also in St. Pete, Florida, Nashville, Cranberry, the UK, Germany, and China. And so
Well, that's reason alone.
So there's a lot of people that, and I do feel it's very important to spread culture and vision and mission with your teams face to face. It's hard for your teams to stay motivated when they're working on important projects if they're not, you know, getting some personal attention. So I do spend some time with teams on the ground, and so that's one part of it. And then customers. If you're doing product development, you know, your best input is from your customers. So I do spend time seeing how our products work and then just watching our customers do what they do so I can make sure that we're generating good ideas for how to make our products better.
I'm going to solicit some phone calls. I feel like the shopping network, but I'm going to try again.
Okay.
The phone number here is 650-856-1491. Our new series is Jobs That Require Travel, and even I'm fascinated by our guest, Kim Howland, a VP of Global Marketing, who's talking a little bit about her travel life. I'm fascinated to find out a little bit about what do you do with meetings? Do you schedule I hope you don't schedule your meetings the first thing in the morning after traveling for such a long time.
I do. I leave myself, well, so the thing with traveling is it can take a lot of productivity out of your life. Right. And so you have to learn how to use your travel time well. And I have become very adept at having meetings during the travel time. So I have meetings scheduled often for the cab rides when I'm on my way to airports.
Oh, that's very clever.
Yes, and then I usually leave myself a break to get through security, but then I will often have a half an hour phone call scheduled while I'm waiting at the airport. So,
can I, the viewing, listening, they don't know where you are.
The people I'm meeting with?
Yes.
Well, often it's.
I mean, you don't hear people calling gates and stuff like that.
Oh, no, I'm pretty good about being on mute or scheduling meetings where they'll know I'm in the airport, but we just have to have
Got it.
one-on-ones or catch up on something. Although I have had board prep meetings from airports, and that's a little distracting. But yeah, so I use that time, and then I will often have scheduled a meeting. If I have an hour layover, I'll often have a half an hour meeting scheduled in there. And then the plane time is a great time to catch up on email and do any critical thinking. So that's when I think through complicated problems, or your strategic planning is a good time. I don't sit near colleagues on planes. I like my alone time to focus. But
Do you ever try to sleep?
Occasionally, not often on planes, because it's just good time to get work done.
You're one hard worker, Kim. I'm very impressed.
But then you do leave yourself time to be late and not get to a meeting when you land. That's for sure.
Talk a little bit about, I was fascinated about your wardrobe tips. I don't know if a guy can benefit from this, but I think my female audience would love to hear what you do to make sure that you can have a carry-on if you're gone for different
So
places.
since you're never packing anything that has to be checked, couple key things. Well, first, it's very important to stay exercising when you're traveling, because it keeps you energetic and fresh and helps with jet lag. And so you need your running shoes or whatever shoes you're exercising in. So that's one pair of shoes, and you basically have a 2-shoe rule. So you get all the clothes that you pack for your week that you're gone have to match a single pair of shoes. And that's how you can really get everything in there.
So you would bring a couple of dresses and...
Yep. Usually, I usually opt for dresses because they roll, and then ones that roll up. Nothing that has to be dry cleaned. And ever since my awful ironing incidents where I burned an iron-shaped hole through a dress, I also try to...
wow.
Yeah, I forgot to test the temperature. So try to limit how much ironing needs to be done as well. So
now, this is one question I didn't ask when we were preparing, but what kind of fun can you have on a business trip when you're traveling this much? What do you do for yourself to have some modicum of fun on these things?
That's a great question. Well, I do have friends and family all over the place.
So
I often get to have dinner with someone, which is great. And
I hope they're sensitive to make a home-cooked meal rather than take you out. You're out eating all the time, I'm sure.
Yeah,
I want to have you home to eat.
No, it's good. Yeah, yes, people will have me over for dinner, so that's nice. And let's see, I've gone to baseball games or sporting events in other cities.
Good.
Occasionally, that'll work out.
Can you see a show in New York? Go to Dublin Theater?
I haven't done that, but I probably could. It's just that, yeah, I don't know.
Okay, one of the other things, talk about transportation. How do you get to the airport? How do you get around? Do people meet you? Do they pick you up? Do you have Lyft or Uber? What do you do?
Big fan
Taxi?
of Lyft.
Lyft.
Yeah, Lyft is my app of choice.
We do have a caller. Excuse me a moment. Sarah, this is Dr. Business. How can I help you?
Hi, Dr. Business. I was wondering how your guest dealt with time changes, if she travels through all different time zones.
I like that question. I'm so pleased it came up. Go for it.
It's a great question. So I spend a lot of time traveling back and forth in the U.S., East Coast to West Coast, so about a 3-hour time not about, in fact, a 3-hour time difference. And I do struggle with jet lag, which is funny. For how much I travel, I do struggle with it. So I tend to keep almost split the difference in that when I'm on the West Coast, I wake up usually around 5 or 5:30, and I have meetings starting at 6 a.m. on the West Coast with my East Coast team. And then when I'm on the East Coast, I sleep later, so I sleep until 7:30.
Do you change your watch? Do you go to bed at the right time? These are some of the things my wife and I are constantly challenged by.
I go to bed when I'm tired.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So if you're traveling back east, you get there at 6 o'clock. It's really 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock. Yes. So for better or worse, well, that's where the importance of exercise. If you work out every day, I find I'm usually somewhat fatigued, a little bit enough that I don't usually have a hard time going to sleep on the East Coast. What I do have a hard time is when I've been on the East Coast for a couple weeks and come back to the West Coast, I do get tired really early at night. I somehow have a harder time staying awake.
Do you
later.
change what does your watch say?
I always change my watch and my computer clock to the time zone I will be in immediately.
Great.
Yeah.
Sarah, does that answer your question satisfactorily?
Yes, thank you.
Do you have a supplementary one to ask? She's really good at this.
Not right now.
Well, thank you and good luck. I hope your travels at your job bring you pleasure.
Thank you.
And I have to admit, I do use Ambien sometimes if I'm going to Europe and I'm going in that direction 5 or 6 hours so that I will be tired enough to go to sleep when I get there that first night. So.
What about some of the tips they have? For example, when we flew to London, they said to go outside, to go to the
sunlight,
sun.
Yep, that helps. Absolutely.
Do you find it's difficult going to Asia? Someone said going to Asia is worse than coming back.
Yeah, I have always found anytime when you get to be 9 hours or greater time change, it doesn't matter which direction I'm going. You're so far off that you're just kind of in a daze and you get over it. I can't explain it. I have a harder time with shorter changes.
Now, does the company have a coach-only rule? How do they handle long flights? I worked with an executive who only could fly coach no matter where he was going.
That, I believe, is our policy. Yeah, I definitely fly. I mean,
do you
I'm
have
only 5 feet
sub-O
4
stockings
inches
too?
tall, so it's not as bad for me as it is for some of my taller colleagues. But I do prefer. There's one area I have preferred status on United, and they have that business or that little economy plus.
Yep.
And that's perfect for me. So I will try to fly United if I'm going overseas, so that I have that little bit of extra.
Do you wear
legroom.
those stockings?
I
That
do
supposedly help you with that?
I do not wear stockings. I do always travel with an eye mask, and I will wear that on a plane. And I am very good.
It's a great gift for you. A little sequins, maybe a little chic.
Exactly. And earplugs. I always travel with earplugs.
That's a great tip too.
Yeah.
Now, what about movies? Do you watch all the movies?
No, I never watch movies on the plane. It's also very strange, but I also try not to drink on planes. That always makes me feel weird when you get there. So, but yeah, if you put on if it's supposed to be evening, you're supposed to be sleeping. Your eye mask, earplugs, and just try to go to sleep right away.
Good for you. Now, talk a little bit about what happens when you miss a plane, you miss a flight, a key meeting. That's why I get very anxious on travel days, and you seem amazingly loose and relaxed.
Yeah, I think when you travel all the time, you realize you can't change it. So, yeah, you definitely miss key meetings, and I've definitely taken meetings
after traveling that far and missing it.
Yeah, that's a bummer, but it happens. Also, you end up sometimes where you have traveled purposefully to be face-to-face with someone for something important, and the worst is when, and this has happened, it's like you're going to show up too late to make it to the meeting,
Right.
So then you end up someplace else on the ground so you can be at the meeting at least virtually, and having to spend the night someplace completely random, Topeka or something, before you can fly home again. So you're like, oh, I just went to Kansas for the day for no reason.
Wow. Now talk a little bit about are there any advantages to this? You seem to have a great wanderlust, and you don't seem to be as wigged by it as many people. What is the good part of business travel?
Well, again, I get to see a lot of people. I get to be I still stay very connected. I grew up on the East Coast, and most of my family's on the East Coast, and I see them a lot more than I would otherwise. I see them a lot more now than I did when I was out here consulting and not traveling back to the East Coast all the time. So that's really nice. You get frequent flyer miles, so
you get to keep your miles.
I get my free flight home at Christmas every year. But I also will do, I have cousins that I'll sometimes just use miles to have them come visit me, so that's nice.
Now, what advice would you give someone? A lot of our audience are young college students or starting fresh. Yeah. What advice would you give them if the job description says 40% travel?
Really understand what that means. So depending on where you are.
Because I think they underestimate that.
Yeah, no, they do. So some very real things. If you're young, it's very, very hard to date when you're traveling 40%, particularly because if you have a job that's 40% or more travel, it's often not planned all the time. So
that's an interesting.
I will have weeks where I think I will be home, and on a Tuesday I'll find out I'm leaving on Wednesday to go someplace. And so it's hard to be predictable, and that makes it hard if you're in a new city and trying to generate a new social circle or date people. shockingly don't love to be stood up repeatedly because you're
That's actually
leaving
a
town.
very interesting
So
point.
I've had 2 relationships end because of travel. So that's tough.
Get clarity about what the travel means.
Yeah.
Be realistic about what you can do and you can't do.
Yeah.
And we
And
talked.
ask where the travel is, because that matters. If you're traveling to places you like to be, then it can be a real benefit. If you're traveling, there was a year that I spent a lot of time in Toledo, which is a perfectly nice place, but I don't know anyone there. And yeah, that wasn't my favorite place to be.
Talk a little bit about if you think there are any personality traits, any skills that you think are necessary for the seasoned business traveler.
Yeah, you have to be super flexible,
Yeah,
very easygoing, not high maintenance. Well, traveling is really easy if you can be flexible about, your maintenance routines and what you wear.
No, I think that's a very good
But
point.
because
Tell the audience why you bring dresses.
because it's one less thing to pack. It's pants and shirts in one go. And it's
And
less to think about. Everything matches because it's just one thing.
if you wanted to tell someone the best way to manage reentry, what would you tell them?
For me, the big thing is having a routine no matter where you are and sticking to your routine. And so when you come back, it's right back to your home routine. So for me, that's exercising first thing in the morning, and then also just eating well. That makes a big difference.
I wanted to hear your line about getting a good administrative assistant.
Oh, so well, that's a key to any life of travel. Is it really helps if you have a personal assistant or someone who is helping you with all of the life stuff. Because a big thing for me is that I can be gone for 2 or 3 weeks at a time, and so all of those errands that you normally do randomly in the evenings you can't do, and having someone be able to take care of that stuff for you is key.
Great. Well, I think we have about 30 some odd seconds left. If anyone wants to call, that would be wonderful. 650-856-1491. If you had to do it over again, would you have either taken or not taken a job because of the travel requirements?
I wouldn't, but I definitely could see how people would if they traveled as much as I do.
And the other question that I got a kick out of is, when you go on vacation, do you really get on an airplane?
Absolutely.
Amazing.
The world's a great place. You got to see it all.
Now, have you ever had your computer break on a plane?
Yep.
What?
I had someone knock my computer out of my hand standing in line at the airplane and smash my monitor, and then I had a cross-country flight where I was doing work on one little corner of my monitor.
I love it. Well, believe it or not, our time is up, Kim.
Right.
I want to thank you again for coming. You were a perfect guest.
Great.
I want to remind people we're back on the air on November 17th. Our guest will be also someone who travels a lot. I want to say hello to my Business 160 class at San Jose State and my Management 101 class at Menlo College. And thank you for watching and listening. And good luck to everyone. And that's the end of our show. Take care.